there, and welcome to the Big Apple School podcast, the weekly English show where we speak about everything under the sun. The major goal of this show is to help you improve your English and, of course, learn something new. My name's Katja, I'm a host, and today with me,
Maria,
and
Ben.
Dear listeners, you know that we here at Big Apple School believe that the sky's the limit and we want to make our podcast even better. But unfortunately, we cannot do that without your help. So could you please subscribe to our pages on Apple, Yandex, Google, or any platform where you listen to our podcast and let us know what you think. How do you think we can become even better? What can we improve? What do you like or dislike about our show? So rate and review our podcasts, give us stars, leave comments, you can ask questions, and you can even send your ideas about our next episodes. It will not take much time or effort, right? But it will help us a lot. Isn't that so? Isn't that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Maria, Benjamin, I haven't seen you for such a long time.
Mm-hmm.
How's it been? What have you been up to?
Been enjoying the rain, enjoying the cold rain before the hot summer comes.
Doesn't it feel like Britain?
It does feel a lot like Britain.
It feels like home.
Yeah.
Just close your eyes, ignore the dust and whatever Russian being spoken around. You can,
And only 3 or 4 more days of cold showers at home.
Oh, Masha,
Yeah.
what about you? What have you been up to?
Well, working as usual. Yeah. I don't know, nothing like special. Well, I think I have come through my allergy period, so now it's over almost, and I'm happy about it.
Is that hay fever you suffer from?
Yeah. I'm allergic to birch trees.
Oh, that's...
Oh, and we have plenty of those.
Yeah, like a Russian person is allergic to like the genuine Russian thing. I mean,
Can you
birch trees.
drink birch tree juice? Yours of your sock. Can you drink that?
I just don't drink it because I don't like it, and
It tastes so good. I tried it for the first time.
it doesn't taste at all.
Yeah. No, you can't... I mean, you can taste it, can't you, Katia?
Yeah.
Well, I have tasted it like several times.
I mean,
I love it. It's
actually,
great, yeah.
a couple of weeks ago, my mom and my sister, they got like a whole, 2-liter jar full of it. Like, do you want some? I'm like, I'm not really a fan of it. Oh, if I had known that you were a fan of it, Benjamin, I would have
love
brought it all to you.
At first, I thought it was really strange because I had tried horse milk previously a month ago, and I thought it was going to be something strange like horse milk, but it turned out to be really nice.
Birch milk.
Birch milk, yeah.
Not as strange as horse milk. Well,
Benjamin's adventures in Russia.
Yes.
All right. And I just a week ago finished, well, not I finished, but the semester finally finished at the university where I'm teaching. And to those who do not know, I teach Russian at a university in the US. I mean, at an American university because now I'm in Russia. So, and while I was teaching and while, I was going through all of that struggling with Russian by my students, I realized that would make a cool episode of the podcast. So to talk about languages, to talk about Ben's experience with Russian, because I see my students suffering and I was wondering whether you have gone through the same thing. So
here we are.
And here we are, yes, to talk about languages. So, and I think the first question that I want to ask you is, what languages do you actually speak?
Well, it depends what you mean by speak. This has always been a huge debate between
Yeah.
people who like languages.
When I teach my students and they like, when am I going to start speaking a language? I'm like, from the very first lesson, you are speaking. If you say hello and my name is in a language, it's like you speak it. So then I probably speak 3 apart from Russian, which is my mother tongue, like German, French, and English. I mean, I'm able to say hello, ask about the person's name, maybe order something in the restaurant,
In French
and in German. But of course, I'm not able to study at university there.
Yeah. So English,
I'm an English teacher, so English is English.
Did you do German at school?
I did French at school and I did German at university. 5 years of French at school and 3 years of German at university, which is my second language. So it's my major is English and
Ben, what about you?
Well, when you say speak, obviously this is a huge debate. So we have debates about fluency.
Okay, let me rephrase the question then. What is your situation with languages, and on what level, maybe, what can you do in certain languages?
So I have a solid knowledge of a few languages. It's a hobby of mine, learning languages. So I was born in Brazil, and when I grew up there, I had a really good knowledge of Portuguese. And then I moved to the UK. In the UK, French is taught at school. So
Really? Is it?
Yeah, most schools teach French or Spanish. So I learned a lot of French, and then I started learning Italian. And
you majored in Italian and Russian.
Yeah, Italian and Russian. And also at school, I did a bit of Mandarin. So I can't say I speak. I can hold like a very, 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 very basic conversation in Chinese, but yeah. And then I also started learning a bit of Spanish, and my favorite language other than Russian is Dutch.
So you can hold a conversation
like 7
in Dutch.
languages.
Yeah, I mean a basic conversation. I'm not saying I can speak.
Mash, I think we could just stand up and leave, you know.
Yes, we could. But who is going to ask questions to our polyglot?
Ben can just...
You speak German, so that is somewhat related to Dutch.
Like I don't. Well, let's maybe use these measurements. Yes, like A1, A2, B1.
Yeah.
I think that because I guess most of our listeners more or less understand these terms. Yes, and as for my German, I guess I'm A2.
Yeah.
And as for my French, I guess I'm A1. So I don't know if it counts as speaking.
Exactly. So most of my languages are within like the A2 kind of bracket.
Yeah, but not Italian and Russian.
Well, Russian I could definitely more than get by in Russian, but it's still a work in progress. And
I think no matter how long you have been learning any foreign language, it's always a work in progress.
Yeah, you'll never. Yeah, I mean, your English is impeccable. It really is. But yeah, it takes like years, if not decades.
I mean, look, I have been learning English for the last 13, 14 years. 13 maybe, I'd say. And I still, every single day, there are words I do not know. There are concepts I do not know how to explain all the time. Like, I don't think this will ever
it'll never
end.
stop.
Yeah. Okay, so you have Italian, Russian on a really good level that you can...
Yeah, it's in the B area. So, yeah. And then, all the other languages, Portuguese, I'd say, is in the B area as well, because I grew up with that. But the problem is my Italian and French kind of messed up my Portuguese, because all the Romance languages are somewhat connected. And,
Which language came first, let's say, French or Italian?
Or Portuguese.
Okay, but after Portuguese, was it French or was it Italian?
It was French, because French you're taught that from a very young age in England.
So did that help you to learn Italian? Because French and Italian, they have similarities.
Yeah, somewhat. So for instance, in French, you have the verb manger, which is to eat. In Italian, you have mangiare. So there are many similarities,
And then what about Portuguese and Spanish?
Portuguese and Spanish are very close. It's easier to learn Spanish if you speak Portuguese than it is for Spanish people to learn Portuguese. It's kind of like Russians trying to learn Polish and Polish people trying to learn Russian. So it's easier for Polish people to learn Russian than it is the other way.
Yeah, because if you're a Russian, you try to learn Polish, it's going to be, it's
difficult.
A nightmare. It's really difficult. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Have you tried?
No, but I have friends who had to learn Polish because they wanted to have this, I think it's called like Polska Karta. So when you had, let's say, great-grandparents who were Polish and then you ended up in Russia, you can actually get this Karta or whatever it's called in English.
Does Polish belong to the Slavic group of languages?
Yeah, it's a Slavic
It is a Slavic.
I mean, that's so strange because when I was preparing for the podcast and I Googled like the most difficult languages to learn, of course it depends on who you are, like a Russian person or an English-speaking person, but Polish was the language in the most lists.
There's a lot of similarities. So, for instance, the Polish word for lake is jezero, and in Russian ozero.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm
They have
surprised
a
why
little-
it is so difficult, because it should be
Yeah.
similar to Russian.
I think it's because of their case system and also the pronunciation. They have a lot of sounds that are difficult to pronounce one after another. So because they have a lot of these sh sounds and the spelling as well. That also adds to the list of reasons why. Yeah. Wow. So,
What about you, by the way?
well, of course, I speak Russian.
Yeah.
Do you know any Yakutian, the Yakutian dialect?
Oh God!
Not dialect, language.
I know only some words, and it was really fun to teach some Russians the word for goodbye, because they ask like what's the Yakutian for goodbye, and you say kursuakaderi. They're like, forget about it. But yeah, I know English. I can hold a conversation in Spanish.
Cool.
So, but some basic conversation. And I remember when I first came to the very first class, I had in Spanish, and my teacher asked me, so do you know anything? And I said, well, I know how to say, hi, my name is, I'm from, and I would like to get some wine, please. She's like, you're ready to go wherever
can
you
get
need
by.
to go. Like, yeah. So let's say when I was in the US and somebody started speaking to me in Spanish in an Uber, for example, I could hold a simple conversation because they thought like, oh, Katerina, that's not, that's like a Latin American name. And I said, well, among other things, yes, but it's also an Eastern European name. So, yeah. But that's actually, well, I mean, I used to learn German. I used to be able to speak German at a like B1 level.
Oh, is this at school?
Yes. And I was obsessed with Germany. I had been dreaming about moving to Germany. I was sleeping and dreaming about going to Berlin, and I knew all the lands of Germany, But then when I was entering the university, I was not admitted to the English-German group, but to English-only group. So, and off it went. My dream to go to Germany and move.
Well, what's your favorite German dialect? Do you like Swiss German? Do you like Southern?
We are not
I have
Bavarian
so much
German?
into
No, yeah.
Yeah. Because they all have different, they're completely
Do you
different.
have a favorite
almost.
English accent?
It'd have to be an Australian accent.
It's so
They're
fun.
really funny accents. I love them.
Have you noticed how recently there's been some kind of a popularity maybe for the northern accent?
Well, yeah, of course, there's so many different northern accents as well. So, yeah, I'm not even going to try.
I was watching
could,
the Peaky Blinders. God, I was just sitting like, oh God, I love the way, they sound.
Yeah, the Brum accent, the Birmingham accent. Yeah.
I used to be able to differentiate those because when I was at university, we had 400 hours of phonetics. So, and we were taught how to, to tell all those accents apart, the Liverpool, Birmingham's, well, of course, Scottish, Welsh and whatnot. And I used to be able to do that. But then, the moment I graduated, it kind of...
Yeah, it's actually quite hard for non-native English speakers to differentiate between...
I've never been able to differentiate, and I still am not. Well,
Yeah,
I
it is
could
pretty
probably
difficult.
like distinguish, an American guy and a British guy, but
Yeah.
that's it. No nuances, no details, and just maybe because I was taught, what is called like proper British accent.
RP, received
Yes.
pronunciation.
Yeah, RP, yeah.
I used to love, when I was in the US or when I was in other countries and people ask me, where are you from? I usually ask them, where do you think I'm from? Oh, and then the fun began because they like, well, you're definitely not an American because of the accent. So you are probably not British either. So, and then, they were limited to the amount of countries. They're like, definitely Europe, but not Spain. Okay, you have blue Eastern Europe, but it was mostly because of the eyes and the name then, because they're like, what's your name? And I said, Katerina. They're like, oh, okay, then Eastern Europe. That sounds like an Eastern European name. But I still cherish the moment when I was in London in a pub and I started talking to a woman. She was an English teacher, working somewhere in London. And I said, yeah, I currently teach, substitute a professor at university. She's like, well, that one. And she, pointed at a university like across the road. I'm like, oh God, no, in Russia. She's like, you're not a London. I'm like, this is the best moment in my life and I'm going to remember it forever. And then I went to the US and my British accent went down the hill. So no, not anymore.
Well, I was sad a couple of times that when I speak English, I sound French. I don't know.
Well, I mean, when people learn English, I love to encourage people to retain their accent, provided that they speak English with they speak proper English, correct English with proper intonation. But it's really cool when you retain your accent. And I love hearing French people, for instance, speak English. It's so cool.
I agree with you because I think, Marcia, you have had students too who said, I want to change my pronunciation. I want to sound, differently, because they think that if they have a bit of an accent, that would be, horrible. They would be looked down at. And I always give an example of professors whom I had a chance to meet, professors from Columbia University, Yale, Harvard. And let's say there is an amazing professor from Yale. She has very thick Russian accent. Doesn't make her less honorable, respected? No.
Absolutely. And if anything, it's really cool when people respect it even more, hearing that you have an accent and that you learn to language at such a high level.
I mean, I don't want to pretend being anyone else. I mean, I'm Russian and I will be, no matter which country I live in. And I mean, I'm not ashamed of it and I'm not going to be. So why should I hide it? I mean, if I'm comprehensible, then...
Yeah, exactly. Right. As long as you're understood, that's the most important thing.
Yeah. And speaking of, learning languages, have you noticed, well, Ben, you have not been teaching English for that long.
Not too long,
but Masha, have you ever been asked, by students like, oh, but I've seen the ad which says that I will, I will learn English within 3 months, 4 months, to being fluent. So what do you think about that? And
it's not that I really have had such students who truly believed in this. Can I say this word bullshit here?
Yeah.
Okay, bullshit. But there is a lot of this rubbish on the internet. It has been for a while, and maybe now it's not that much of it, but still you can find it. But I think that people tend to stop believing it now, because people are starting to realize that you need to put your efforts into studying and into mastering a language, whatever language it is.
So it's impossible, to just learn it within a couple of months.
And when my students are really my students, I mean, when it has been some time, not like the first class, I can say that, guys, if you ever meet anyone who says that they will teach you any language in like a month or so, just run away, because they are frauds. They are like, they are cheating on you. So it doesn't mean then that I want you guys to have me as your teacher forever. No, but please pick up and think.
Be reasonable. Yeah.
Learning a language is a long marathon, and it's not something that, of course you can learn the basics in 3 months. Of course you can learn how to sustain a very basic conversation, but fluency, absolutely no way.
Yeah, and it's not a bad thing that it's like a life-lasting process. I mean, it's a good thing. I love it. I love studying, and I love the process of like constant development. So it's not something that is discouraging.
Yeah. And sometimes my students ask me like, when will I be able to, to masterfully use the articles and never have to think about them? And I said, sorry, never.
If we speak about articles, absolutely never.
Because this is the topic I've just had with several of my students, and they're like, when is this going to happen? I said, look, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, articles and prepositions are very, very difficult for non-native English speakers. It's a problem I frequently see with students, but it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
As long as you can communicate effectively.
Especially for us who speak Russian language, which belongs to the Slavic languages. In the Slavic languages, we don't have articles at all.
Yeah.
That's why.
But we have cases.
We have, but we were immersed into them like from the very early age.
Well, technically, English does have a genitive case, technically. So apostrophe S, that is
So that's true.
kind of like
If you go deep
a
into
genitive case.
the linguistic science,
So, and what can be the common struggles then of learning a language? Well, of course, with English, it's articles is the first struggle that comes to mind. But in general,
Well, feeling like you're embarrassed, the reason why many people find it difficult to speak is because they feel they'll make an idiot out of themselves. And
especially when it comes to adults, because children are used to studying and they are used to like constant learning. But adults, they feel ashamed of speaking and they're like, well, I'm a respected specialist in my sphere. And when I come to an English class, like,
suddenly it doesn't matter anymore.
I am into some like valley, like I was on the top, on top of the mountain in my sphere, but now I'm somewhere down deep.
yeah.
Okay, what other struggles can there be?
Remembering vocab, essentially. Vocab retention really is an issue, especially if the language you're learning is completely unrelated to your mother tongue. So I've never studied Korean, but I can imagine that's completely different.
You've studied Chinese.
Yeah. Well,
and
they're not related, Chinese and Korean. I mean, in some ways.
I mean, in a way that it's still different from,
from English
or from Portuguese.
Yeah.
Because of the characters and everything.
Yeah.
Or Russian, totally different alphabet.
Yeah, Russian takes a long time because with Italian, you can kind of, I mean, not always, but you can kind of guess what a word's going to be. Whereas with Russian, you can't really do that.
So what have been your struggles with Russian?
With Russian, I'm trying to think. I mean, of course, there's a lot of struggles. It's not so much the pronunciation, even though sometimes that is an issue. So, for instance, the word vzгляд, which is to glance.
Lots of consonants, together.
The consonants take a while. The biggest issue would have to be prepositions, to be honest, sometimes.
Prepositions?
Yeah, prepositions can be quite an issue.
I thought you say cases. But
Cases are actually not too difficult because they have an order. Also remembering the genitive plural of Russian nouns can be really difficult.
Although, if you separate all the words into groups, that becomes way easier.
Yeah.
Like, if nominative singular ends with a vowel, you're like, I just drop the vowel that it is.
I mean, the process of learning Russian, you just have to accept. Things are just the way they are. You have to, you just have to accept it.
Just accept, suffer, and memorize.
Exactly. After you get over the case system, it's actually not too, I mean, it's not easy, but it's not too difficult. It's sometimes the endings are difficult. But Russian's a very logical language, which is probably why, I mean, it's a deep philosophical argument, which is probably why Russia produces so many chess players, so many mathematicians.
That's an interesting point.
It's a very logical language.
Is it?
I wouldn't say so, to be honest.
Well, we have rules, but we also have lots of exceptions.
So does
there are
English.
exceptions, but I think English more so than Russian.
Interesting.
That's why this rule that you mentioned, I think it can be applied to English as well. Like, don't ask why. Just ask how, and remember how it works. Don't ask why. Don't go into that depth.
Oh, may I share the story about struggles of learning Russian?
Yeah.
So I was now in the spring teaching the second semester of Russian. So, and in the first, and I still remember, it happens every year. When students start learning Russian, they ask me multiple times, Katya, what's the Russian for to go?
Oh God, yeah.
And every time I said, you're not ready for it yet. You're not ready for it yet. At the end of the first semester, they learn that there are 4 different verbs. Идти, ходить, ехать, ездить. They're like, oh, Jesus. Okay. After a month of, really hard going through all the exercises, they say, okay, we are now cool. We know Russian's verbs of motion. We know that they are multidirectional, we are cool. There are 4 of them. And, they also conjugate horribly. Then they start their second semester of Russian and they find out that there are also prefixes like поехал, уехал, заехал. And that's when they go crazy.
Yeah, the prefixes are really, I mean, it is logical.
But there are just
But
so
they're just-
many of them.
yeah.
And then sometimes you would think like, okay, let's say we just had a lesson on it like 2 weeks ago with my Russian learners. And I was showing them videos and I was asking them, what is going on in the video? And then you would think, okay, I know that the prefix is added to the verb, then we conjugate the verb the way we usually do. Now, the verb ездить, if we're talking about it or he, we would say он ездит. Logical, right? But why is it, and we had a verb and they said, проездит. I'm like, I understand why you would think that, but it's absolutely none of that. So why is it проезжает? No logic.
Well, and the same situation is with when Russian learners start to study English, but it's about prepositions.
Yeah.
In Russian,
yeah.
it's prefixes, but in English, it's prepositions.
all
Like,
about
Yeah.
prepositions.
for example, the favorite quotation marks verb is get.
Yeah, there's so many different.
Yeah, depending on the
100.
preposition, it can be anything. And the first meaning they get is like get получать. But then they understand that there are multiple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have
meanings.
a student who's now at a pre-intermediate level, and we got into all these phrasal verbs, and she's like, I hate them. I hate them with all my heart. I'm like, but think about it. You can, express so many ideas with their help. So, but
Well, I know at the bookstore Capital, I just bought a book of the 100 phrasal verbs in English. Obviously, it's in Russian, but it's a good book. So if anyone wants to buy that book, go to Capital.
Do they have like exercises?
No exercises.
Just a list?
It's just a list. It's just a list.
Sounds scary.
It's a good book. It's a good book. It's really short, so it's only 100 phrasal verbs, but yeah.
So, and one of the most common struggles, no matter the language, as Ben has mentioned, is the language barrier. So, what would you advise to people who have this language barrier? How can they, we overcome it?
Well, for instance, what you're talking about, if you go to a hotel and the person doesn't speak or the receptionist doesn't speak your native language, is that what you mean? Or
No, I mean,
in
it's when
general?
you learn a language, let's say with a teacher, and you're okay with speaking with your teacher because you know them, but you're terrified of speaking to somebody else, especially a native speaker.
Well, I had it, and like I totally had it when I was at school. I was good at English, and it was a gymnasium with like deep knowledge of English and a bit of French. And then I went to this university, the Faculty of Foreign Languages, and I knew, the linguistic science and phonetics and grammar. Oh my God, grammar, yes. Theoretical grammar, practical grammar. Theoretical phonetics, practical phonetics,
Hated
stylistics.
theoretical grammar.
The history of the language, everything. But I was afraid of speaking with, for example, once we had guests from Germany, even not from England. They were from Germany, and I was afraid of speaking with them because of this language barrier.
Yeah, I guess it can be very intimidating. For instance, when I started learning Russian, I came to Russia for the first time. Well, obviously, Russia's renowned for its serious faces. And when you go to the supermarket and they say something like, "Карта наш есть," have you got our? And you don't know what they're saying, and they have a serious face. And
You're afraid to smile at them and, just...
Yeah. Which is quite funny. In France too, they're very serious as well. But yeah.
To be honest, I still do not know how to overcome this language barrier, because every time I have an opportunity to speak Spanish, and I remember during our classes, we had a guest, Mario, and he would come and say something in Spanish, and I would just look at him, nod and say, hola. And that's it. And I was terrified of speaking because I thought, what if I make, an idiot out of myself and Mario will think I'm an idiot. I don't know.
It's just something you have to accept. You will sound like an idiot, and it's something you just have to. It's just part of. It's like jumping out of a plane, I guess. And
You know
just
what
have
I've
to do it.
noticed though? If you talk to adults and say, you speak in their native language and you say, if I make a mistake, could you please correct me? And they would say, oh, you speak so nice. There was that mistake maybe, but usually they won't even correct you. If you speak to a child, they'll be like, you say something like, you made such a dumb mistake. They will laugh at you. They're cruel, like all the time. Seriously, kids don't have borders like that and boundaries like that.
Yes, I was trying to explain the word doll to a student of mine who's, I think, 8 years old. And he just wasn't understanding doll. And I was pointing at a doll. I said, kukul. And it's like kukul, and I couldn't pronounce it right. And he was he was laughing so much. Actually, it wasn't doll, it was a puppet theatre. So kukulni teatra, and it was kukolni teatra or something. And he was laughing so much at me.
Yeah, kids absolutely do that.
But it probably means that these kids are not going to have this language barrier. Because nowadays kids are not afraid of speaking a foreign language because the boundaries are open and we are more we go global. And
I would say that in general, kids are not afraid of, making mistakes, and that's what we have to learn from them.
Yeah, well, because when I was a schoolgirl and we were studying English, it was somehow not real. It was some English from a book, and I couldn't fully realize that people really speak it. Well, I knew it, but I couldn't embrace this knowledge.
So distant.
Yes, it was distant, and I didn't think of going to a country to practice it. And we didn't have native speaking teachers or even visitors, so it was somehow artificial.
Yeah,
now it's a different story.
Now we have so many resources to learn language
because
and
of
stuff.
pop culture, because of the internet. So now I guess we have less language barrier.
A long time ago I read a Dostoevsky translation in English, and it was written by this lady called Constance Garnett. This was back in the early 20th century, I guess. And I just have no idea how she would have even fathomed learning Russian. It's just so difficult I don't know how she would have found any kind of resources to learn Russian, let alone travel to Russia. And she translated all these long Dostoevsky books, and
I have a question. So do you think it's possible actually to achieve fluency or, a relatively good level of a language without visiting the country of your target language?
No. No, I think, maybe you can, as long as you're immersed in the language. So for instance, if you are surrounded by people who speak that language, then yes, you can. Yes, you can have to be surrounded by people on a constant basis, or you have to have constant access to materials. If you don't,
that's a good point.
If you don't, then it's going to be an almost impossible task.
Maria, what do you think?
Well, I think that I somehow managed to, because due to several reasons, I wasn't able to go to the US or to Great Britain. I was going to last year, but you know what happened. And so I was about to have a 3-week course in methodology, but yeah. But even at that point, last year, I was able to realize that it won't help me to master my English, in terms of grammar or vocabulary or something, but just to be I wanted to be closer to the culture, because every language is very closely connected to the culture of a country. That's what I wanted to.
When you were learning English, how much access to materials did you have? So how much did you surround yourself with the English language?
It was a long trip. It was a long
obviously
journey.
You're fluent in English, and you never.
And this fluency, which now I obtain, maybe came. It's strange, but it came not at university. It came after I graduated from university, because I knew a lot of stuff after graduation. And we had good teachers, good professors, nothing to complain about. But this huge language barrier and this, inner inconvenience and being afraid of speaking, it passed only maybe when I started to work here in Novosibirsk, when I moved from my native town here to Novosibirsk. And Well, maybe even when I started to work at Big Apple School, because here we are surrounded by lots of native speaking teachers. And I mean, it really helped me to overcome the language barrier because I just stopped being afraid of making mistakes. I just didn't have time.
to worry about that.
To worry about
no time
that.
to worry about mistakes.
Yeah, so I needed to react. I needed to respond. I needed to help, for example, someone. And, because I also work as a methodologist, so I needed to help teachers from, let's say, Great Britain, from the US to adapt here in Russia. And, I didn't have time to worry about my mistakes, which I obviously still make, but I'm all right. Okay, almost all right with it, of course.
You know, when you then said like, oh, it's impossible at first, my reaction was like, well, we'll see about that. But then you said, unless you are constantly, surrounded, and exposed to different materials and language. And because I have examples of lots of English teachers in Russia. Like, for example, when I was at university, I didn't have a chance to go to any country until I was in my last year. Or in my fourth year, actually. But then, and until then, I still managed to reach a certain level, and I was speaking. Maybe I did have a little bit of a language barrier, but still, I was able to speak with more or less good flow. So, which means that it is possible. But then when my students ask me, how can we achieve the same level that you have? And I said, look, we have a little bit of a different background because for 5 years of my life, I spent 10, 12 hours a day.
Yes, dedication. It's all down to dedication, motivation.
Exactly. If that had been 2 hours a day, probably I wouldn't have been, where I was after graduation. So, but it was 10 hours because just like Masha said, we had, all this phonetics, grammar, practice of oral and written speech, translation, all of that. And everything was in English. So whether we wanted or not.
Because obviously you both are essentially almost native.
Stop. But thank you.
But in order to learn a language to that level, you have to be dedicated.
It's true.
Both of you were, and you have to be.
Well, I don't consider myself as a native or
I don't
C2
pretend
level,
to be.
C2. Well, I know that I'm C1 plus because I have my certificate.
Yeah.
But I don't know how above this level I am now because I haven't been formally assessed yet.
Well, I mean, the most important thing is you have to be completely dedicated. You have to put in a lot of hours. It's not something that you can just be fluent in English in 3 months course.
Yeah, it's not that you can buy this course on Instagram that they advertise. 20 hours and you will understand all the grammar.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. 20 hours. Oh, that's a long time because I've recently seen 3 hours and all grammar explained.
Yeah. Or 3 hours and we will show you how to pretend to be a native speaker.
How to pretend. Oh, lovely.
But it's funny that you said that you did English at university. And because when I studied Russian at university, I'd left university not speaking that much Russian. And I worked in a hotel for, I think, just under 2 years. And most of my colleagues there, they were from Latvia and Lithuania, and they all spoke together in Russian. I learned so much more Russian working in the hotel than I did at university.
Yeah, it's reasonable. Yeah.
And it was quite embarrassing because I left university not knowing the word for like utyug or halat or
look, that's these things. So are only things that you get to learn when you actually start leaving, I believe. Because let's say, maybe Masha will agree, but I have had so many students with advanced level who said, we know so many things, like basically everything. I'm like, okay, so what's the English for ложечка для обуви? And they're like, And then I asked some more things and they're like, okay, we got a point.
Yeah, but at the same time, sorry for interrupting. If I'm interrupting, when you are advanced or when you're fluent, okay, let's say when you're fluent, you're able to express yourself even without knowing this exact term.
That's true.
That's the thing. So if your communication did not fail, it means that you succeeded, and it means that you're level is
Yeah, but my
all
point
right.
is about Ben saying that he didn't know these words. So
Yeah,
the thing is that
sure.
we usually do not even learn these words at school or, at language courses because there's no need to. We learn about other things and then you start really using these words only when you need them. And you need them when you move or let's say you are in a country. Because when I was in Britain, I had to explain somehow that let's say I don't need the keys. I'm going to call... And then there was like, my mind went blank because I didn't know the English for domophone. And I had to explain myself, and that's how I learned forever, I think, words like intercom. And I keep mixing the stress in this one, even though I know the word colander.
Oh, colander, yeah.
Colander. See, I did that again. So
colander, sieve, you can
Because
also
they're
call
not
it,
frequent words.
Exactly. But I still, I wouldn't have even memorized them if I wasn't in the situation when I had to explain this.
Yeah, so that was one of my first words that I learned when I came here. So I got off the plane, I bought all these pelmeni. I didn't know what to do with the pelmeni.
Oh, Ben and
So I
his
was like,
love for
all right,
Pelmeni, a love
how-
story.
So I learned, what was it? Sita, yeah, macaron. So like, that was my...
No.
I wouldn't say sita.
Yeah,
wouldn't
it's
say
for
sita?
flour.
As if for flour?
Yeah, sida is sieve, so it's for
Yeah.
flour, for sugar, but you would need a more horrible word, which is durchschlag.
Durchschlag. Oh, that's a new word for me. So
I think it comes from German.
Yeah, it does sound like German. Well, yeah, a lot of German words have influenced Russian, like the word Landschaft. Yeah. Many words, yeah.
So what do you think are some of the most difficult languages in the world?
Hungarian, Korean, Japanese. Yeah, Mongolian.
I would agree.
Mongolian? I
Yeah.
didn't even think of Mongolian
Yeah.
as a language in general. I'm sorry.
Finnish-
For all the
Finnish and
fellow
Estonian.
Mongolians listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say like almost all Scandinavian, maybe all Scandinavian languages like Danish, Swedish.
Icelandic is said to be
Norwegian.
extremely difficult as well.
Yeah, it's distant. I believe Hungarian, Finnish, Estonian are all distantly related, and Icelandic somehow has some kind of relation to it. Another really difficult language is Basque. Have you heard of, you know Basque? Yeah.
Because
Is it
as
the
far
one-
as I know, it just has no connection to any other European language at
Yeah.
all. That's why it's
Where
so...
is it spoken?
So
is it
in
the
France and
Spanish?
Spain, there's a little region called Basque Country.
Yeah, there used to be the Basque country.
Interesting, yeah. So compared to that,
Maybe Arabic.
Arabic's very difficult, yeah.
I really want to learn Arabic at some point, to be honest.
Yeah.
I find it beautiful.
It
but at the
sounds
same
very
time,
satisfying, yeah.
But at the same time, I know the struggle because let's say if you learn Arabic, you have to make a choice. What Arabic are you learning?
Yeah.
Because Arabic in Morocco and Arabic in Tunisia are different.
I think the same about Chinese, right?
Yeah,
Can
they
be
have
Mandarin
many
Chinese or
different dialects, yeah.
some other.
Yeah.
Oh, so which is why, Benjamin, you're lucky that Russian has no dialect. It's just Russian.
It is great, except
Even
for
though
the
it's
Caucasus.
unbelievable.
Like they have a difference in the Caucasus. Sometimes they say "yahavaru,"
But it's more
but
like,
it's like
just
small
pronunciation.
dialects.
and it's separate sounds, I would say, but
Yeah.
it's not a complete,
It's
you know,
not
completely
Maybe
completely
different dialect.
north of Russia, they tend to pronounce this "o" sounds more
Yeah.
clearly, but
Yeah, there's only some small things.
Yeah, but other than that,
I swear there was a word in Novosibirsk for, what was it? It's like a filer,
fora.
multifora.
I had to
yeah.
learn this word
Yeah,
when I
yeah.
moved here.
You told me
It
about
was-
this, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but other than that, it's all the same language, which is
Yeah.
fantastic, I believe. You know, I sometimes envy people who from places where their language is nearly the same as other languages. Because let's say I have a friend and she speaks 5 languages. She was born in Azerbaijan,
Yeah.
which means that she speaks Azerbaijan at the
Oh,
same
and
time.
Turkish, yeah.
Turkish,
Yeah.
exactly. So and then she moved to Novosibirsk, which is Russian, and she studied at the Faculty of Foreign Languages, which means she now speaks fluently English and French.
Yeah.
Always envied her. And the same, and then we have Azerbaijan, Turkish, Tatar, because
Yeah.
it's the same, Yakutian from the same family. I remember when I went to Kazan and we were comparing the languages and we were counting from 1 to 10, nearly the same. So yeah, I believe the same in Azerbaijan and Turkish.
Yeah, it's the same if you live in the Czech Republic or Czechia now, and Slovakian is almost exactly the same, as is like Serbian, Croatian, Bosnian.
Oh, it's like, this joke, like, how do you know so many languages? Oh, I'm from the, Southern Slavic countries. It's like, learn one, get 5 for free.
It is, yeah.
So, yeah. And, when people learn the language and, like people differ in the way they perceive information. So, and we know that there are people who are more of auditory people, there are more of visual learners, there are more of kinesthetic learners. So what kind of a learner are you? How is it easier for you to perceive information?
I'm quite a kinesthetic visual learner. Yeah.
Yeah, the same for me. Well, I don't know which type of learner I am, but as a person, I am a kinesthetic person. So I need to touch
Of
things.
course, there's no way that people are just one.
Yeah, sure.
Some of one.
But also quite
we're all a
often
mixture of
I
everything.
found that I remember words when I'm embarrassed by not knowing a word.
Oh, I think
So,
that's just,
yeah.
it's just me with a colander and, intercom forever.
You're going to remember that forever because you have a brain neuron which is linked to fear.
Yeah,
and
like, I was
embarrassment.
embarrassed when I didn't know.
Yeah.
The same way I remember the word moving, because when I was at university, I was sent a song by a friend of mine who's an Australian. And I'm like, oh, I love this song. It's so moving. He's like, are we talking about the same song right now? I'm like, well, really make me want to move. He's like, honey,
yeah.
that's not what moving means.
Students even didn't believe me a couple of times that the word moving means what it means. And in one book, we have 2 words, dramatic and moving. And they keep confusing them. And they really checked in a dictionary because they didn't believe me.
Well, I'm going to remember this word forever because of the embarrassment that I felt.
Yeah.
So since you're both kinesthetic versus visual learners, how do you use that? I mean, in what way is it easier for you to remember words maybe or constructions when you learn a language?
I still use this old school method of making lists and putting these papers somewhere in my house.
Mm-hmm.
Or not TV, computer screen, fridge, inside the fridge, on the toilet.
Yeah, the post-it notes. That's a great way.
Mm-hmm.
Some people just learn through crazy repetition. I had a student who couldn't say the word fire extinguisher, and he's struggling a little bit with retaining vocab, but he remembers this word because I said огнетушитель, and I said it 20 times, and he just kept on repeating fire extinguisher, and now he always remembers this word. So
Wow.
yeah.
I think I would be annoyed by
Yeah.
doing this,
He
by
was.
by
Then it would get
hearing
stuck in
the
your-
same again and again.
He remembers it now. So-
In my mind, maybe it wouldn't stuck. What
Yeah.
I need to write things down, so I
With
need to use my
your-
motor skills. That's how I was learning things at school. For example, when we needed to learn a poem by heart, I needed to write it down.
Oh, I'm more of a visual, which means sometimes, it's annoying, but sometimes I don't remember the word itself or the phrase itself, but I remember where I saw it and what
Absolutely.
place in my
Yes.
notebook or something. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I don't need the place. I need the word itself. Brain, what you doing?
So I don't think anyone could be 100% auditory, 100%
no,
visual.
no, I
or-
don't think so.
Yeah, so it's like,
It's always a mix.
yeah,
There are people who are more of auditory learners, so they usually, they listen to podcasts, they listen
Yeah.
to different audios, they remember things. How? I mean, but of course, then they would still need to see the word to know how it's written or something. Yeah. Okay. And in the world of, these hundreds and thousands of different languages, do you think that there's ever going to be a universal language, a universal lingua franca? And it's English.
well,
that.
not within the next 100 years. Definitely not within the next 100 years.
Well,
Maybe-
if we speak about this term lingua franca, I guess it's more about like some universal language for business, for communication, for understanding. But it doesn't mean that other languages are going to disappear. It's just a global communication
a universal
language.
one universal language for everyone.
I think English still is. It has been for
Yeah.
some time, and it still is.
So, do you know anything about Esperanto? 'Cause
Yes.
there were
yeah.
attempts to create. Well, it was created like an artificial
I think
language,
by
but
a Polish scientist, or maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think perhaps you are correct. Yeah, it was developed for the European Union, or I think back in the day it was called the European Community, And I think it was developed in order to foster harmony between the European nations. And yeah, it was a failed language, but I think only about 1,000 people speak it natively.
Some people speak it natively.
Oh yeah,
Esperanto?
some people have learned it to a native standard, but it's like 1,000 people.
Wow, I did not know that.
It's fascinating how some languages can be artificially constructed, if not revived. So if you look at Welsh in the UK, that language was essentially a dead language, and it was artificially revived by the UK government.
Or Latin.
Yeah, or Latin. Yeah, well, Latin is
I mean, it had been dead for a while, and then I don't think that people speak it, but doctors still use it, medical university, and some other spheres of science. And
I watched a YouTube video of this guy who was speaking almost fluent Latin, which is really quite funny.
Which also brings the question, why?
Out of curiosity.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like, why do we learn languages?
People
True.
can learn Klingon, for example.
That is also true.
Yeah.
Also true. I know that there are people who do learn languages from different universes, like Klingon, like the Thraki.
You know, this
from the Game of Thrones.
I don't know that one. I never watched Game of Thrones.
I'm still, processing this information.
I didn't know that they had languages of their own.
George Martin actually created several languages while he was creating the Westeros, the world of Westeros. So Dothraki being one of them, not limited to it only, but there are other languages as well.
Well, I never saw the film Avatar, but apparently a language was created for that film.
There was a language?
Apparently.
It came out so long ago, I don't even remember. Wow.
Yeah, I never watched it because it didn't appeal to me. But
I recently came across a picture which was like, if you're from Eastern European country, you would definitely understand it. And there was a text, and I was like, what language is it? Because I do understand it. And apparently somebody created an artificial language that would be understandable to all the Slavic language speakers. So be that, Czech or Polish, because it has elements of all of them. And you look at a word and it looks familiar. It's not from Russian, but it looks familiar and you understand it. I'm like, what kind of magic is that? How do I understand it?
Word order, parts of speech.
Yeah. And
prefixes, suffixes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The language. Have you ever heard about the book? I think it's called Lingo, Lingo, Lingo.
Probably no.
If you ever have time, it's a fascinating reading because it's a nonfiction book about languages. If you want to know why Esperanto failed to be a universal language, or what is common between Armenian language and a platypus. Have I intrigued you?
No, go on.
I'm not going to tell you. Read the book.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a really fun book about lots of different languages. I think it discusses 63 different languages in, different aspects. So
if we attach this question of why Esperanto failed to be a global language, I think maybe it's also because it has no connection to any culture, to any nation at all.
That is true.
No background.
So then, do we need a universal artificial language then? Because language...
Artificial, maybe no.
No.
Just a lingua franca that, it should be an existing language, but it's easier when people understand each other. But of course, teaching English as a lingua franca, it's a bit different because we focus on communication rather than on strict grammar rules here.
Well, I guess, taking a language that already exists and slightly modifying it. So if you look at the Soviet Union and Russian, obviously Russian was slightly modified throughout the Soviet Union. I mean, the Russian alphabet changed drastically since I believe, for instance, if you look at Ukrainian,
drastically?
Not drastically, but if you look at Ukrainian, how they still use the I's, I believe that was used in
I think
Russia
we
before.
just get rid of one or two letters.
Not drastically, but it was, there were changes.
Of course,
You're being a little bit dramatic here.
we have only 33,
But I mean, because then artificial language will have nothing to offer except for just a means of communication. Whereas very often we learn language because of the culture of the country or countries.
Yeah. For example, why people want to learn Italian? Like, because maybe they love or appreciate opera and theater, and maybe it's the language of love for them. The same maybe for French. Like, it sounds so beautiful.
Same for Russian, actually. I have had a certain number of students who started learning Russian because they fell in love with literature. Again, I remember mentioning the example of a student of mine who was majoring in biochemistry, which was, already horrible enough. I mean, hard enough because it's double major, it's biochemistry. And then she had some spare time, and you have to take subjects that are not related to your major. So you broaden your horizons. So she decided to take Russian literature with one of our professors. She fell in love with the literature. She fell in love with Russian. After that, she took up an intensive course, some other courses. Now she has a double major in biochemistry and a minor in Russian. I mean, who would have thought? So, yeah, and that's amazing. Are there any languages that you want to learn? I mean, Benjamin definitely wants to learn all of them, apparently, being a polyglot.
I'm trying to think the number one language to learn. It would have to be, Korean is fascinating. I'd like to learn Korean, but that's not an easy language.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
So you need to prepare yourself.
Yeah. To be honest, I'm happy learning Russian right now. It's the coolest
Well, that's why
language.
you're here.
Yeah.
That's why I always speak to you in Russian only. Well, I try to. Maria, what about you? Is there a language you would like to learn?
I would like to come back to learning French or German because I don't want all the effort. Okay, not much of an effort, but still some effort. I don't want it to be in vain. Maybe Spanish. I'm considering European languages mainly because I am not sure that I will succeed in, let's say, Asian languages.
Well, Spanish is actually more widespread than some of other European languages.
Yeah, sure, it is. It's like, I guess it's number 2, like English, Spanish, and Mandarin Chinese. They are like the big 3.
Arabic is in the top 3 as well, yeah. Yeah, I want to learn Spanish more because, I have been learning it for like so many years on and off. It's been more than 6 years now. I gave up, I started, I stopped. I had 2 semesters of Spanish at an American university. Then I again did nothing. I just want to finally reach a proper level of, let's say, B2, C1, because I'm not giving up an idea that, one day I might end up in Argentina and live there. So, and if I do, I will need Spanish, even though Argentinian pronunciation is a little bit different,
So what attracts you to Argentina? Is it the beef? Is it the
among
weather?
other things?
Yeah.
Not the weather. I don't like
wine.
hot weather, but I'll tell you about that after the podcast to save a little bit of an intrigue, But in general, Argentina is a very friendly country. So, yeah. And I still, want to learn a little bit of Arabic at some point. I don't know. I love the way it sounds.
It is a very the sounds are very satisfying.
It's just something about it, yeah. And I have a friend. She's from Tunisia and she's a blogger, so she posts a lot of things, but she only posts things in Arabic, so she speaks Arabic. And I just turn the sound on. I'm like, oh, I love the way it sounds. I have no idea what you're saying, but I love the way it sounds.
The script is really cool.
I would find it extremely hard to learn. I think the writing. Yeah, and especially, given that it's from right to left and not from left to right, but that's the
magic.
Yeah, the attraction of it. Okay, and speaking of, teachers, so there is this constant debate, I think, as to what is better, to have a native speaker as a teacher or a non-native speaker as a teacher. So what do you think?
I think you need both, to be honest. You need to be motivated to get to a certain level, and the best way to do this is to have a non-native teacher show you the way, and then, of course, get like advanced speaking practice with a native teacher. So if you, for instance, so when I was learning Russian, I still am learning Russian, but I came across some English speakers who spoke Russian to a really high level, and I thought, I want to be like this person. Well, not like this person, but I want to speak to that level. Is so cool. So you need a mixture of both.
Maria, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. For example, when I was a kid, I think that we should have had some native speaking teachers just to check that the language we were studying is the correct language.
Still used and it's still...
Yes.
But I would agree, I think that at the beginning, when you just start, your language journey, it's always better to have a non-native speaker just because somebody...
Yeah.
It's important to have somebody who would be able to explain things to you in your language. All the nuances maybe, or, occasionally translate a thing or two. And then you also, because you know that if this person speaks your native language and then has mastered the language, your target language, that means they know the struggle you are going to go through. And then the higher the level, the better it is, to have a native speaker as a teacher. Because then, you just need the practice, the speaking practice, to know something that non-natives might not know, for example. So, yeah. And I think, when I'm thinking about my Spanish, I think I want to have a native speaker as a teacher, but definitely not now, maybe later. Because when I was in an American university, we still had an intermediary language of English when there was something that wasn't clear or something, that needed explaining. So, yeah.
So you definitely do need a mixture of the two.
Yeah, that would be the best combination. Well, lucky, if it comes to English, we have both here at Big Apple School, both natives and non-natives, All right, and my last question to you would be, so what do we have to keep in mind when choosing a teacher? So native, non-native, okay.
Well, it depends on what level you're at in the language learning process as well. So it completely depends on that. If you're really advanced, I would say, get someone who's either at C2 level or at a native level. But when you're learning basic grammar, it doesn't really matter too much if it's a native or non-native speaker.
But what are other criteria you might have?
You need to trust this person.
Trust this person,
yes,
okay.
You need to trust the method that he or she is using, and you need to be able to follow the rules that the teacher established for you. I mean, because it's not like you come and say, I want you to teach me by this book. I mean, then you maybe can self-study.
Although there is a method like that, though.
What do you mean?
I mean, isn't there a method in learning languages when a student defines the material and a student chooses what materials you're going to use and the teacher just obliges and...
Well, I don't know, probably, but maybe it's not like it doesn't maybe go this way, but there is of course, the process should be student-oriented. And student-centered approach, not like the teacher is the center. No, it's not what I'm talking about. I mean, but if you come to a professional, you need to trust this professional.
Okay. So, and if I asked you to give one piece of advice to our listeners regarding languages, what would that be?
Immerse yourself as much as you can in the language. It's great to come to school and you do need to speak to a teacher or to a native speaker to learn a language, but you're really only going to learn a language if you're dedicated and you completely immerse yourself in the language.
Amen to that.
Yeah, I will absolutely support this idea. So try to use as much content as you can in the language that you are currently studying. I mean, because 2 or 3 times a week is obviously not enough to master. I mean, it's good, it's efficient, but it's not enough. And so you need to surround yourself by this language. And also, one more thing, just relax. Because studying is fun.
Make it
is
a pleasant experience. Yeah, especially now when we have so many ways to, immerse in a language. We have YouTube, we have podcasts. For example, there's a great podcast. It's called Big Apple School Podcast. I don't know if you've heard about this, but great tool. But anyway, YouTube, podcasts, books, post-it notes. There are speaking to random people that's on different platforms. Songs, you name it.
Yeah, and the progress will inevitably come. It will.
Maybe, you won't be noticing it at first, but it will be there.
listening to music definitely works. So for instance,
Singing.
I use Mikhail Krug to help me with my Russian. He's great.
I mean, his Russian is great.
Oh, it's beautiful.
All right. So how much have you learned from him?
Well,
And
recently,
what kind of vocabulary have you
I
learned?
was
Yeah,
looking.
yeah.
Все косы мои, все бантики, все прядь золотых волос. So bantiki are the little bows.
Of course, it's
Прядь золотых волос is a lock of golden hair.
Mm-hmm.
And косы are locks of hair. So
I hope that you are using this vocabulary already.
Do you often have a chance to
no,
use that?
but no, but it's funny. Yeah, it's a great way to learn language.
That reminds
Yeah,
me.
whatever makes you happy. I mean, not
Of course,
you,
of
Ben,
course.
but like you as humans. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. It was a pleasure to talk about languages. Yee. And to find out that Ben is a polyglot and now feel bad
Yeah.
about not knowing anything. All right. Well, that was the Big Apple School podcast. And today we discussed languages, what struggles we can have while learning a language, what are the most difficult languages in the world, and so on. Thank you for listening. And remember, if you struggle to understand our conversation, you're always welcome to our website, which is bigappleschool.com/podcast, where you can find full scripts of each episode so you can read them while listening. Great. So thus you can use both auditory way and the visual way. Fantastic. And if you want to get more content which will help you learn English, you can follow us on the social media such as Instagram, VK, YouTube, Telegram, and so on. We are literally everywhere. Just search our name, which is again Big Apple School. So that was Katja, and my guests for today were
Maria.
and
Benjamin.
stay tuned, and we'll see you around.